The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with silence, a rare and strange thing in a room that usually echoed with the voices of dozens of species. Today, something unusual had happened. Ambassador Elise Voss, the representative of Earth, had stood without warning, walked calmly to the center platform, and announced that humanity was officially leaving the Council. No speeches, no anger, no complaints, only a quiet message, sealed in a silver capsule and a polite bow. For a few seconds, no one moved or spoke. Then a quiet buzzing started, confused whispers, rustling robes, blinking translator lights, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The humans had only been members of the Council for 73 standard cycles, barely a blink in galactic time, but they had already become one of the most important and unpredictable members. They had brought fresh ideas, new technologies, and strange philosophies. Some admired them, others feared them, but no one ignored them. So when they left just like that, without warning, it felt like the galaxy had tilted slightly off balance. Ambassador Threx of the Volari, a species known for their intelligence and long memories, felt an uneasy chill as he watched the human delegation walk out of the chamber. He didn't believe this was just politics. No, this was something else. Elise Voss had looked too calm, too certain. As the Council debated, trying to understand the reasons behind Earth's exit, rumors began to grow. Some claimed the humans had found something they weren't ready to share. Others believed they had finally gotten tired of the Council's constant restrictions and slow decisions. The Council had never trusted humans completely. Their rise was too fast, their minds too strange, and their methods too unorthodox. Still, nobody expected them to leave without a single demand or warning. A week after their departure, strange reports started to surface. A remote research station in the Delker Expanse failed to respond. No distress signal, no power readings, just silence. When a search team arrived, they found nothing. The entire station, along with its crew and classified technology, was simply gone. Not destroyed, gone. No burn marks, no debris, not even a radiation signature. Then a second station vanished, and a third. All these locations had something in common. They were places where human scientists had worked in the past. Now, their disappearance started to look less like coincidence and more like a plan. Still, there was no evidence linking the humans. Earth had closed its gates. All diplomatic channels were shut. Their ambassadors had returned home. Their communication relays went dark. Even civilian traffic from Earth reduced to zero. They had vanished behind a wall of silence, as if waiting for something or preparing. Threx started digging through old files, conversations with human researchers, forgotten meeting logs. The more he looked, the more uneasy he became. Humans had always asked strange questions during council meetings, especially about precursor artifacts, AI regulations, and restricted tech. They had always been interested in the things the Council feared, and now those things were starting to vanish. Threx wasn't alone in his fear. Other ambassadors began to whisper behind closed doors. Were the humans cleaning up the galaxy? Were they hiding something they discovered? Or were they preparing for something much larger? No one knew. And that was what made it worse. Because if there was one thing more dangerous than an enemy, it was a mystery. And the humans had just become the biggest mystery the galaxy had ever seen. As days turned into weeks, the silence left behind by humanity became heavier, like a thick fog settling across the galaxy, difficult to see through and harder to ignore. At first, the Council hoped that the humans would return, or at least send a message to explain their sudden departure, but there was nothing, no signals, no travel logs, no activity from Earth or any of its colonies. The disappearance of the research stations had shaken the Council, but now the mystery was growing deeper. A pattern was starting to appear, one that only the most observant minds could notice. Every station that vanished had once held human engineers, scientists, or advisors, even if only briefly. At first, it felt like coincidence, but when the seventh facility went dark without a single alarm or trace, the truth began to take shape, like a shadow in the corner of one's eye. Ambassador Threx of the Volari was no longer just worried, he was afraid. He spent long nights reviewing old communication logs between Council scientists and human experts, many of which had been marked as low priority at the time. Now, he saw those conversations in a different light. The humans had always asked very specific questions about shielding technology, power grid systems, experimental AI designs, and ancient devices left behind by the precursors. They had listened closely, offered small suggestions, and never pushed too hard. But it was clear now they had been learning, gathering information, maybe even copying data in secret. But the question that haunted Threx the most wasn't how, it was why. What were they planning, and why did they need to disappear to do it? The Council ordered deep space probes to be sent toward Earth's region, but every single probe either malfunctioned or returned blank data, as if something or someone had jammed them. Attempts to scan human colonies ended the same way. It was as if humanity had wrapped itself in a cloak of shadows, unreachable by normal means. Then came the message, short and chilling. A private transmission was received by Threx's personal terminal, bypassing security systems entirely. The screen flickered to life, and a voice he recognized instantly. Elise Voss spoke just one sentence. "We left the Council, not the galaxy." The transmission ended before any trace could be tracked. Threx sat in stunned silence. This wasn't war. It wasn't diplomacy. It was something else. Something bigger. Across the galaxy, reports began to spread of strange sightings, unknown ships passing silently through deep space, vanishing before being identified. Entire asteroid belts shifted as if something massive had moved through them. On a remote mining world, a team of technicians discovered a hidden relay station buried deep beneath the surface. It was active, transmitting a signal in a human frequency. The message it repeated was simple: Stage 2, begin. No one knew what it meant, but everyone felt the weight behind those words. Panic began to grow inside the Council. Meetings turned tense, accusations flew between species, and blame was placed on old rivalries. But underneath it all was the same fear that humanity was not gone, but simply preparing. Some believed they were creating weapons beyond understanding. Others thought they were building a new civilization in the shadows. A few whispered about the precursors, wondering if the humans had found something ancient and powerful. What no one wanted to admit aloud was the possibility that humans were doing all of those things and more. As the Council debated how to respond, a cold wind of uncertainty blew through their ranks. They had always believed they could control humanity with rules and oversight, but perhaps that belief had been a mistake. Perhaps humans had never needed the Council. Perhaps they had only joined to learn how to leave it behind. And now, somewhere out there, in the dark corners of space, they were beginning something new, something no one else could stop. In the deep stretches of space, where stars seemed like distant candles flickering in a sea of black, something began to change quietly at first, then with growing concern that turned into fear. Communication hubs on the outer rim of Council territory started to fail, one after another, like falling dominoes. At first, officials blamed it on solar storms, equipment failures, or local sabotage, but soon it became clear these were not accidents. These sectors weren't just losing signals, they were going completely dark, with no warnings and no recoverable data. Even emergency backup channels, built to withstand almost any disaster, went silent. Council technicians tried everything to reconnect, but every method failed. When scout ships were finally sent to investigate, they found empty space where relay stations should have been. No wreckage, no signs of battle, just quiet emptiness, like something had erased all presence of life and technology. What made it even more disturbing was the locations being affected. Every blackout occurred near ancient zones, places sealed off by the Council for decades, areas containing precursor ruins, forbidden technologies, and deep anomalies that the Council had always kept under lock and key. These were areas humanity had often shown curiosity about, asking questions the Council never liked answering. Now, those exact places were disappearing from maps. Ambassador Threx, who had been tracking these events closely, knew this was no longer just a mystery, it was a message. Someone was moving through the galaxy with precision and purpose, and it was no coincidence that these were the same places the humans had once asked to study, only to be denied. Threx shared his findings with a few trusted allies, and they too began to see the pattern. It was as if humanity was slowly removing the most dangerous secrets the Council had hidden away, not destroying them, but taking them. But for what reason, no one could say. Then came the moment that truly shattered any remaining doubt. The Council's flagship warcruiser, the Vigilant Star, returned from a routine patrol across Sector 19. It had not responded to any calls for 3 full cycles, and just as the Council was preparing to list it as lost, the ship appeared outside the central docking ring, undamaged, powered, and floating silently. Rescue crews boarded immediately, fearing the worst, but what they found was beyond strange. The ship was fully functional, every system online, weapons untouched, power at full levels, but the crew was gone. Not a single life form remained on board. No signs of struggle, no blood, no forced entry. Personal items were still in place, meals half-eaten, even game boards mid-play. It looked as if over 300 officers and specialists had simply vanished in the middle of ordinary life. Security footage was erased, internal sensors were wiped clean, and no logs existed for the missing time. The ship's last recorded entry was a simple navigation check-in, followed by total silence. Fear spread through the Council faster than ever before. If humanity could take an entire ship without harming it. More importantly, why were they doing this silently, without declaring war or making demands? The Council convened an emergency session. Some called for immediate military action. Others argued for diplomatic outreach. A few, including Threx, advised caution, warning that humanity might already be too far ahead. That night, Threx sat alone in his quarters, reading through ancient reports, long-forgotten files about the precursors and the strange energy readings hidden deep in Council archives. Many of them had been marked irrelevant or speculative by Council science leaders, but Threx remembered that humans had always taken an interest in them. A dangerous thought crossed his mind: what if humanity hadn't just found old relics? What if they had learned to use them? What if the reason they left the Council was because they had discovered something the rest of the galaxy wasn't ready to know? Something powerful enough to make the rules of the Council meaningless? The silence spreading across the stars was no longer just technical. It felt alive, like a warning before a storm. And as more systems went dark, one truth began to rise above all else. Humanity was no longer following the galaxy's path. They were building their own, and whatever they were becoming, the rest of the galaxy was not prepared. The galaxy had begun to hold its breath. Entire star sectors had gone quiet, and even the boldest trading ships were turning back toward safer routes, avoiding the expanding silence like it was a spreading infection. The Council had tried to keep it hidden from the public, but whispers traveled faster than light spaceports, data streams, and merchant networks buzzed with rumors. People spoke of ghost fleets, of human vessels that shimmered like mirages and disappeared before sensors could lock on. They spoke of worlds erased from charts, of artificial moons orbiting dead stars that pulsed with impossible energy. But more frightening than the rumors were, the facts that confirmed vanishings, the crippled probes, and the way the humans had simply vanished from view while leaving behind traces of something greater. And then, without warning, came the moment the galaxy would never forget. A signal, clear and direct, was broadcast across all major Council frequencies, encoded in every language known to the Council. It came from nowhere, and yet it reached everywhere at once. The screen showed a dark sky filled with stars, and slowly a single human figure stepped into view. It was Elise Voss. She looked older, calmer, and not at all surprised by the silence that followed her appearance. Her voice was soft, but carried a weight that held every eye in place. She didn't speak of peace or war. She didn't threaten, didn't beg, didn't explain. She simply said, "The old order has served its time. You built walls around knowledge? We tore them down. You feared the void. We walked into it. We are not leaving. We are changing. And the galaxy will change with us." Then the feed cut, and what followed was not panic but stunned stillness. No one could even decide what it meant. Was it a warning? A challenge? A declaration? Behind closed doors, the Council tried to analyze the message, but the truth felt far more massive than any analysis could contain. Shortly after the broadcast, Deep space sensors began detecting movement near the boundary of Council space, hundreds of unidentified objects, too fast for traditional engines, moving with coordination too precise for random activity. Patrol fleets were sent to intercept, but when they arrived, there was nothing to fight, only structures, huge and complex, orbiting rogue planets and black holes. These weren't weapons. They were observatories, data nexuses, and something else things even the most advanced Council species couldn't fully understand. It was as if the humans had begun creating a second layer of the galaxy, hidden in plain sight, invisible until now. These installations weren't meant to attack, they were meant to watch, to listen, to learn. And it was clear that humans had been building them for years, maybe longer, in silence. One station, located near the collapsed star system of Durnus Prime, emitted a low-frequency hum that caused nearby Council ships to experience systems malfunctions and hallucinations. When a science team boarded it, they found no human crew, only machines, self-running, powered by strange cores that responded to touch with flashes of memory like data. The machines spoke in code, and the code told stories not just of human history, but of what came before, of the precursors, and of civilizations that rose and fell long before the Council ever existed. Somehow, humanity had learned to tap into that ancient knowledge. They had uncovered the true history buried beneath Council myths, and now they were using it not for destruction, but for evolution. A few bold Council members demanded a united fleet response, but others hesitated. How do you fight something you don't understand? How do you stop a species that no longer needed ships to move, weapons to fight, or diplomacy to influence? It became clear that humans weren't trying to conquer. They were reshaping the rules. Systems began to feel the effects. Time anomalies, gravity pulses, even the behavior of quantum networks started shifting in regions where humans had passed. Some called it soft warfare. Others called it ascension. The truth was simpler, and more terrifying. Humans were lifting themselves beyond the level of a single species. They were becoming a force. One Council scientist, after analyzing human-built devices, wrote a single sentence in his final report before going silent: "We are no longer watching them. They are watching everything." Ambassador Threx, who had followed this journey from the first moment, stood on his balcony overlooking the shimmering lights of the Council capital. He no longer feared destruction. What he feared now was irrelevance. The galaxy had watched humanity grow with suspicion, tried to control them, tried to limit their reach, and now that same galaxy was watching them disappear, not in defeat, but in transformation. The humans had not just left the Council, they had outgrown it. And in doing so, they had revealed how small the Council truly was. Threx looked to the stars and whispered a thought no one dared speak aloud. What if this is only the beginning? Long after the last Council meetings dissolved into silence and endless debate, after the broadcast stopped and the unknown human stations spread further into forgotten sectors, something began to change in the very fabric of the galaxy, not suddenly, but with quiet certainty. Across the spiral arms, strange readings started to appear in the oldest systems, those untouched for thousands of cycles. Dead stars flickered once more for a moment, and long-lost satellites powered up without fuel or command. Libraries that had been sealed since the Precursor Wars lit up with new access protocols, each bearing the same message in 100 languages: Legacy Protocol activated. No one knew exactly what it meant, but those who had studied humanity closely began to understand that the true purpose of their withdrawal was never about war or isolation. It had been about unlocking something greater, something hidden in the bones of the galaxy itself. Humanity hadn't simply found precursor knowledge. They had decoded it. They had followed trails left behind by beings so old their memory existed only in gravity echoes and star maps folded in forgotten dimensions. And now, those trails were open. On a once-abandoned moon in the Irvani Reach, a group of explorers discovered a vault pulsing with unfamiliar energy. When opened, it displayed a holographic interface, unlike anything ever seen, not alien in appearance but distinctly human in design. It contained messages, maps, starseeds, and a final directive titled Legacy Protocol. The recordings were calm, spoken by voices known across human history: scientists, philosophers, even children. Each message was a lesson, a warning and a gift. Humanity had not disappeared. They had ascended, spread themselves across time and matter, embedding parts of their civilization into systems that could guide others forward. It was not a goodbye. It was a passing of the torch. Species across the galaxy began to receive similar encounters, stations activating in deep space, machines with human voices offering knowledge to those willing to learn, not control. But there was always a test. The knowledge would only open to those who asked the right questions, who sought not power but understanding. Many failed, but a few began to see the shape of what humanity had become. They weren't gods. They weren't conquerors. They were now part of the galaxy's code, guiding it from the shadows, ensuring that no one else would be trapped in ignorance the way the Council once was. The Council itself crumbled slowly, its purpose no longer clear in a galaxy where rules meant little without the wisdom to shape them. Some members tried to adapt, forming new alliances, learning from the stations humanity left behind. Others retreated into fear, declaring the protocols forbidden. But the truth had already spread. On the homeworld of the Volari, Ambassador Threx walked the halls of the Great Observatory, now repurposed as a learning center using human legacy data. He had once feared them, but now he studied them, hoping to understand what drove a species to rise so quickly and then vanish from sight. What he found surprised him. It was never about superiority. It was about survival, evolution, and a hunger to grow without limit. Humanity had seen the stagnation of the galaxy and chose not to wait for permission. They took the leap no one else dared, and now their presence was felt in algorithms, in artificial stars, in gravity wells where voices whispered the path forward. Entire planets began to change not by force, but by inspiration. Civilizations that once fought over borders now worked to unlock the stations left behind. Ideas once crushed by fear now bloomed into new forms of science, art, and life. And in every whisper of advancement, there was a trace of human origin, like fingerprints left not on a weapon, but on the edge of a door slightly open. One day, an old AI satellite drifted near Earth's original solar system, now hidden behind quantum distortion fields no probe could pierce. For a brief moment, the AI caught a signal, a human voice humming an old melody, followed by static. Then silence. It was not proof of life, but it was enough to suggest humanity still watched, still listened. They were not gone. They were waiting. Waiting for the galaxy to catch up, to evolve not by command but by choice. The legacy protocol was never just data. It was an invitation. Not all would accept it. Not all would understand. But those who did would see the truth written not in words, but in the stars themselves. This is the future. Welcome, if you're ready.